God sees the version of you that smiles while secretly carrying the weight of the world. The version of you that tells everyone, "I'm okay," when you're exhausted. The version of you that learned not to ask for help because too many people disappointed you. And I hear God saying, I am not just changing your circumstances. I am healing the survival mode that has been living inside of you. For years, you've been fighting battles nobody knows about. You've had to be strong when you wanted to cry. You've had to keep moving when your heart wanted to quit. You've had to encourage yourself because nobody else showed up. But God didn't create you to spend your entire life surviving. There is a difference between surviving and living. Survival says, I just need to make it through today. Faith says, God has something beautiful waiting on the other side of this. I know you've been wondering why certain doors closed. Why certain people walked away. Why some prayers seemed delayed. But what if God wasn't rejecting you? What if He was protecting the future version of you? The version that won't have to beg for love. The version that won't have to force opportunities. The version that won't have to prove their worth to anyone. I feel strongly that someone reading this has been carrying disappointment after disappointment. Every time you thought things were finally changing, something happened. And now you're afraid to get excited. Afraid to hope. Afraid to believe again. But God is whispering. Don't let yesterday's pain convince you that tomorrow has no promise. The season you're entering requires a different mindset. Not a perfect mindset. A hopeful one. Because the same God who kept you through the hard season is the same God who knows how to bring you into the next one. Your story is not ending in heartbreak. Your story is not ending in delay. Your story is not ending in confusion. One day you'll look back and realize that what felt like abandonment was actually divine redirection. What felt like silence was preparation. What felt like a dead end was the beginning of a new chapter. Keep going. Keep praying. Keep believing. Because God has not forgotten your name, your tears, your prayers, or the promises He placed inside your heart. Your breakthrough may be closer than your fear wants you to believe. And when it arrives, you'll understand why God never let you give up. You're not stuck. You're being prepared. And there is something else I feel in my spirit. Some of you have become so used to disappointment that you've started preparing for things to go wrong before they even happen. When an opportunity comes, you expect it to fall apart. When someone is kind to you, you wait for them to leave. When God gives you a glimpse of hope, you immediately think, what if it doesn't happen? But best friend, that isn't faith talking. That's pain trying to protect itself. You've been hurt so many times that your heart built walls where God wanted to build trust. And God isn't angry with you for that. He understands every tear, every betrayal, every lonely night when you wondered if anyone truly saw what you were carrying. But He is gently calling you out of that place. Not because you're weak. Because you've stayed there long enough. I hear God saying, you have mourned long enough. You have questioned long enough. You have carried burdens that were never yours to carry. Give them to me. The enemy wants you focused on what you lost. God wants you focused on what remains. You still have purpose. You still have breath. You still have a future. You still have promises waiting to unfold. And most importantly, you still have God. The enemy thought the disappointment would make you quit. The heartbreak would make you quit. The delay would make you quit. The loneliness would make you quit. Yet somehow you're still here. You may not be where you want to be. You may not have all the answers. But you're still standing. And that's proof that God's hand has been on your life this entire time. Because there were moments you should have broken. Moments you should have walked away. Moments you should have lost your mind from the pressure. But God carried you through seasons you never thought you would survive. That's why I need you to hear this. The same God who brought you through yesterday will not abandon you tomorrow. The chapter you're in right now is not punishment. It is preparation. God is teaching you things in private that will sustain you in public. He's developing strength that cannot be shaken, character that cannot be bought, wisdom that cannot be learned overnight. And when the blessing arrives, you'll have the maturity to handle what you've been praying for. One day, you'll stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" And you'll start saying, "Now I understand why God protected me." You'll understand why some people had to leave, why some doors had to close, why some plans had to fall apart. Because God was writing a better story than the one you were trying to create. So don't give up now. You're too close. Not because life suddenly looks perfect. Not because every prayer has been answered. But because God is still working behind the scenes. Even when you don't see movement. Even when you don't feel anything changing. Even when heaven feels quiet. God is still moving pieces into place. One prayer at a time. One door at a time. One miracle at a time. And when the day comes that everything finally starts making sense, you'll realize God was never absent. He was guiding you through a process that your future self will be grateful for. So tonight, stop carrying the weight of tomorrow. Stop replaying yesterday. Stop convincing yourself that your best days are behind you. The story isn't over. The prayer isn't forgotten. The promise isn't dead. And neither is the dream God placed inside of you. Your season is changing. Your heart is healing. Your strength is returning. And God is still writing a testimony that will leave you speechless. Hold on. The same God who kept you through the storm is about to show you why He never let you drown. And before I leave you with this message, there is one last thing I need you to hear. The reason this season has felt so heavy is because you've been carrying questions that only time can answer. You've been asking, God, when? God, why? God, how much longer? And heaven has seemed quiet. But a quiet season does not mean an empty season. Just because you cannot see roots growing beneath the ground doesn't mean growth isn't happening. Some of the greatest things God does happen where human eyes cannot see. While you've been worrying, God has been working. While you've been crying, God has been arranging. While you've been wondering if you've been forgotten, God has been preparing blessings that are bigger than what you originally asked for. I know that's hard to believe when you're tired. I know it's difficult when you've heard encouragement before and nothing changed overnight. But this isn't about overnight change. This is about a God who never abandoned you in the middle of the process. Because if we're honest, some of you aren't just waiting on a blessing. You're waiting for relief. You're waiting for peace. You're waiting for one good thing to happen after a long string of difficult seasons. And God sees that. He sees the tears you wipe away before anyone notices. He sees the silent prayers you don't even have words for anymore. He sees the moments when you smile in public but feel exhausted in private. Nothing about your pain has escaped His attention. Not one tear. Not one prayer. Not one sleepless night. And I believe one day God will show you that every moment you thought was wasted was actually building something inside of you. The patience. The wisdom. The compassion. The strength. The faith. The version of you that is emerging from this season will not be the same person who entered it. You are becoming stronger than you realize. Wiser than you realize. Closer to your breakthrough than you realize. That's why the enemy keeps trying to convince you to quit. Because quitting is the only way to guarantee you never see what God was preparing. Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle. Don't walk away one chapter before the breakthrough. Don't abandon the dream because the journey became difficult. The very fact that you're still here is evidence that God has been sustaining you. And I feel led to tell someone this specifically. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are not too old. You are not too late. You have not missed what God has for you. Your timeline may look different than someone else's, but God's faithfulness has never depended on a calendar. What He promised, He is still able to perform. What He started, He is still able to finish. What He planted, He is still able to grow. So lift your head. Dry your tears. Take another step. Then another. And another. Because one day the testimony will be greater than the struggle. One day the joy will outweigh the sorrow. One day you'll wake up in the very season you used to pray for. And when that day comes, you'll look back at this difficult chapter and say, God, I didn't understand what you were doing. I thought you had forgotten me. I thought the waiting would never end. But you were faithful the entire time. So if your heart is tired tonight, hold on. If your faith feels weak tonight, hold on. If you're wondering whether God still sees you, hold on. Because the story God is writing for your life did not end in this chapter. The page is turning. The season is shifting. And what God has prepared for you is worth every prayer, every tear, and every moment you chose not to give up. Your breakthrough is not just coming. You are becoming the person who can carry it.